I want to know if anybody has ever said no. I'm not of good moral character. No. It's like when you apply for a pistol permit and it says, are you on drugs? Are you a felon? Are you crazy? Yes, yes, yes.
Well, apparently that guy down in Texas and Houston got his somehow. They are though.
What about the,
You'll be here. Gary went, okay. Time being 6 o'clock, I'll call the meeting to order. Please all stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would everybody please check to see that their cell phones are on mute? Patty, would you take roll call, please?
Dan?
Wanda,
Here.
Brian,
Here.
John,
Here.
Dan,
Here.
Don.
Here. At this time, does anybody on the commission have a reason, a financial conflict of interest in any of the issues that are before us today?
I do not.
I do not.
I have one on the malt beverage license renewals. The first one on the list there on page 38 is for Sixth Meridian LLC. I will abstain.
Okay.
For which one?
Sixth Meridian LLC.
Oh, okay.
And I will be abstaining on the second set of claims. As
We did a standing last time, so you'll just abstain from those but we've already a standing.
I just want to make sure it's on the record that I'm abstaining from anything having to do with my law office.
Okay.
At this time, I entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I would
Move,
Any
make a motion to approve the agenda.
second.
discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, the same, motion carries. Now's the time on the agenda for public comment. Daniel Chop.
Sure, son, Dave.
David?
David.
David.
David. I'm sorry, David, I'm sorry. Would you like to come up to the microphone, please? Apologize for that.
I'm just here to, just put the outcome of those tax lots over there at dealership outside.
Oh,
That's gonna be the next.
That'll be
agenda
next.
item.
Okay.
Okay,
That's all.
thank you. With no other public comments, I'll close the public comment period. The next item on the agenda is the tax deed property. Patty, you're gonna,
Okay, we opened bids on April 28th at 10 a.m. in the convention chambers. And the bids were for property 05002.500.200. There was a bid from Paul and Carolyn DeLong for $2,505, and Nancy Steffen for $2,375. For property 14.037.300.110, David Shop submitted a $400 bid, and Brian Muckfold presented a $101 bid. And for property 14.037.300.130, David Shop submitted a $2,000 bid. Brian Muckfold presented a $600 bid. For 14.037.600.010, David Chop submitted a $400 bid. Brian Muckfold, $300. Property 14.037.600.150, David Chop submitted a $500 bid, and Brian Muckfold a $700 bid. On 14.037.700.160, David Chop submitted an $800 bid, Brian Muckfold $625. On 14.037.700.190, David Chop $1,200, Brian Muckfold $625. On property in Gayville, 31.300.002.040, Tim and Betty By $3,501.50, David Chrissy $3,605. And there were no bids submitted for 46.200.003.120 and 78.330.001.110.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the sales.
I would move to approve the sales of all. Do you want me to do each one individually or as a group?
As a group.
To approve the high bid on each of the parcels, with the exception of the two parcels where there were no bids.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the sales. Discussion?
For further discussion, one of these properties is in Mission Hill, and I got reached out to by the town of Mission Hill. It's in the floodplain. It absolutely can't be built on at all. Would the board be okay if we looked at possibly just giving that to the town? They'd have to come before us, but I can talk with them about that if that's something we'd like to do.
Was that one of the two parcels
Yes.
that did not receive a bid?
Yes, it is. I'll look into that, and if they're interested, have them approach the board.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed the same. Motion carries. Next on the agenda is a new package off-sale liquor license.
And this is for an off-sale liquor beverage license a new one for Captain Norms located at 43592 South Dakota Highway 52. And this is an off sale.
We're gonna do each one of them separately. That's the
Well,
only-
this one is a new license.
Okay.
Off-sale beer or off-sale everything?
You said
No,
liquor.
just off-sale liquor. Because nobody can have a full, on-off sale liquor, because we already at our limit.
Okay.
But we can have 10 of these, and this is the second one.
Sir, there's 2 seats up here in the front if you want to sit in the front of church. I'd entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, I think this is a hearing. I think we gotta open it
Oh.
up to public comment.
Oh, yeah.
Dan?
Anybody have public comment on? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the new package off-sale liquor license.
Move
Captain
approval.
Norms.
Second.
Have motion and second. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Is Katie here?
No, remember, Kim
Okay.
couldn't come. She had a
Yep.
class.
Were you gonna go over it, or?
She said there was no changes or anything new, and she had in your packets,
Extension report.
yeah. They'll be here on May 16th, if she has anything, she said.
I'd entertain a motion to approve that quarterly report.
I so move.
Have a motion, second.
Second.
Second. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. We're ahead of time. Can we do the voltage line?
We could do claims.
Well, it's not a advertised time. You can go.
Okay.
Mike is here.
Mike?
That's what I needed was an extra. Let's see. There we go. All right. Well, first of all, thank you for allowing me to take a little of your time tonight. I'm Mike Welch. I live at 114 Quarry Pines Drive, close to the dairy dock. If you're a Yanktonite, you know exactly where that is. And the reason I'm here tonight is to talk a little bit about a power line project that East River is proposing to put in. And I'll go through the map. Everybody at the dais has a copy of the map, but for orientation, up is north. And this right here is Highway 52. Okay, and so the dairy dock is right about there. And my house, just in case you're wondering where the heck I live, is right about here. And this is Quarry Pines Drive. So last year, probably late winter, or early winter, late fall timeframe, East River began the process of responding to the need for additional power in the lake area. And when they did that, they put in a substation right here. This is on Deer Boulevard. And you can see it here. This is the Lewis and Clark substation. Now, their original plan for getting power to that substation is the solid blue line. And that, that solid blue line goes all the way from up here on 436 Road, where there's a substation owned by Northwestern Electric. Their plan was to bring the power line all the way down here. This is what a lot of people from Yankton call Smoke Road. It's 436 Road. That comes down to Highway 52 and then go across the south side of Highway 52 with their poles and power lines. And that was the plan that they had in mind until late winter, early spring this year. And on March 27th, I received a letter from DGR Engineering, the land agent for East River. And the letter said that they wanted an easement across the south side of my property to put in their power line. Well, what happened was that the owner of this land here and the South Dakota DOT refused to allow them an easement to cross their land. So now they're looking for a way to get the power to their substation. Now, they've already started construction on this substation. And as a matter of fact, if you drive down Boulevard, Deer Boulevard, you'll see it there on the left-hand side as you go south. So they're in a pickle, they're in a tight spot. And they're trying now desperately to find a way to get to that substation down there on Deer Boulevard. Well, I refused to grant them the easement. I don't want them, they wanted 30 feet into my lot to be able to kill the trees and et cetera, and I don't want them to do that. And as far as I know, I've talked to the owners of this property here, which is currently a vacant lot between my house and the dairy dock. They're not in favor of it. I talked to the owner of this lot right here, and when he gave them an easement, it was with the understanding that they were going to go across on the south side of Highway 52. Well, I've also spoken to the people that live directly to the east of me, and if you've been out that way, you recognize it because there's a long line of trees along the highway. It's about 250 yards of 40 or 50 foot trees, which they would lose if East River comes through with their power line, because as you know, power lines and trees don't mix. So I then also talked to the owner of Yankton Power Sports, and he's not in favor of it. In fact, he was so upset that he was having a hard time controlling himself, because he said they're just offering him a pittance and they want to go right across the front of his property. So anyway, the bottom line is it's just not a good situation. So I wrote a letter to DGR Engineering, and I offered them several possible alternatives to the routing that they were currently looking at. And I want to tell you something. We are so blessed to live in South Dakota in general, and Yankton County in particular, because the people that I've worked with have been so helpful. Senator Gene Hunhoff, Representative Mike Stevens, especially Gene, opened doors for me, put me in touch with people at East River who were willing to work with me and to look at the proposals that I had made, and they take them seriously. I talked to Mark Hoffman at East River. He's one of the overall executive in charge of this operation. I spent an hour on the phone with Mark, and he was not trying to get off the phone. He was being very, very helpful. Same thing is true with Stephanie Horst with BY Electric. I spent an hour on the phone with her. So we're really, really lucky to live in a place like this. And not to mention the people up here in front who are working for your good all the time. And so the other options are shown in yellow and red. And the least impact option would be to go straight south from the substation here on the yellow line, go all the way down to the fish tanks, past the aquarium, down to the fish tanks, across this way and further south, and then straight across over to the substation. And if you've been down that way, this yellow line right here is on Orchard Road, or Orchard Lane, I believe it is. In any case, there's very little development on either side of that road. So from an aesthetic point of view and from a safety point of view, that's by far the best option. However, yesterday I got an update from John at East River, and he told me that the Fish and Wildlife Service is unwilling to grant an easement. They won't allow them to come across. So that yellow line is a dead option. The next best option that I offered for them to look at would be to come south a little ways and then go across on Old Highway 50 right here. And that would bring them their power line. There's already a power line on the south side of the road right here. And then go straight south on Deer Boulevard, that's also known as 437 Road, until they get to the bluff. And then come down the bluff and go straight down Deer Boulevard with their power line to the station. I've driven that road, all of that whole distance, and I think it would impact, there is one house, but most of it's businesses and so forth. So I don't particularly like this option, but it's the best one we have available to us at the present. So now, you might think, gee whiz, that's a pretty steep hill. Now what you're looking at right here, this is the bluff, okay? And this is the Shell station on Highway 52, just for orientation. And this is Deer Boulevard going north and south here. This is Highway 52. I checked, I came to visit with the Planning and Zoning Office, and I checked also with the Register of Deeds here in the courthouse to see whether or not any part of this roadway, and of course it's a section line, on just about every section line in South Dakota there's a 100-foot wide right-of-way for a roadway. And no part of this right-of-way has been vacated. Now you can see, if I zoom in on this just a little bit, that there are things in that right-of-way, but they're trailers and a fence and so forth. And I assume that the people that put them there did it thinking, you know, who's going to object, right? And so, but it has not been vacated. Now to go using this route, they would come down the bluff here. They would obviously have to clear some trees, and then they have to cross Deer Boulevard. And so let's get a close-up look at that. Here's what it looks like. Now, there are those trailers that I was talking about earlier, and they're going to come down the bluff and come across Deer Boulevard. Now, just to close this option off before we even think about it, this is the west side of Deer Boulevard. There's not nearly enough room here to put in their power poles. Excuse me, I'm going the wrong way here. There you go. And an easement would be required and a removal of this tree on the west side of Deer Boulevard. So that's probably not going to happen. Plus the fact that we've got a walking trail, which is the reason why the DOT wouldn't approve the power line on the south side of Highway 52 in the first place because of safety issue, sort of. And so now we're back to going on the east side of Deer Boulevard. Here we have some situations that have to be dealt with. You've probably seen these structures that they're talking about. It looks like a box, a green box that's got all kinds of wires and stuff in it. They would have to put one here. They would have to put another one here. They might, or in fact probably would have to move this light pole right here a little bit in order to get their power line across. And they might have to pay the Sinclair station to move their sign. Okay, so those are the options that we have available to us. So as you can tell, there is no good solution. Somebody's going to get a negative impact, and it might even be a surprise. And so I'm here to give the board an update as to what's the current status of this. And again, I want to thank East River and BY Electric for being so cooperative. But the point is, we shouldn't be here. We shouldn't be here at the 11th hour trying to figure out how to get power to an already existing substation on Deer Boulevard. Now, and I'm sure you, if you live in that area, don't want to spend the 4th of July sitting around in our skivvies fanning ourselves with a magazine when we have a power outage, right? We all like to have our electricity. And so something has to give. Somebody's going to be impacted. But the point is that these guys may know, and I'll tell you, I spent almost 30 years in the United States Air Force as a pilot. And I know one thing, if you take off in a T-38 with 1 hour's worth of gas on board, you're going to end up someplace. It may not be where you want to go if you don't have a flight plan. And so my point is, we need a plan. And I don't know if the county has a master plan for land use that would address these kinds of issues, but I'm here to volunteer.
Mike, would you talk into the mic so
Oh,
they may not be hearing you on the...
Okay. I'm here to volunteer. Don just wanted to get me on the record volunteering. I'm here to volunteer, to participate, to lead the effort, to bring together various entities that already exist. Obviously, Yankton Thrive has a tremendous impact on this already. The landowners have a stake in this. The business owners have a stake in this. The people who have recreational interests have a stake in this. And what I'd like to do is bring all of those people together on a fairly regular basis to look at a 5, 10, and 20-year plan as to how we're going to use the land in Yankton County, and particularly in the lake area. Because as I told these people before, the lake area in Yankton County is truly a gem. It's something that we should care for and we should preserve. And if you want to know what it looks like when that doesn't happen, all you need to do is drive to Okoboji and drive around, and you can't even see the lake because the houses are so close together, and the whole place is a junk heap. And I can say that because I'm from Iowa. Okay, so the point I'm making is we need a master plan. My preferred option at this point, I'm sorry to say it, is the red option. It's the one that's still open. As far as I know, nobody along this dotted blue line on the north side of Highway 52 is going to offer an easement. And so probably more news at 6. And I don't have anything else for you guys. Does anyone have any questions for me?
I got one.
Go ahead.
The yellow line,
Who is
the
that?
only reason you can't use.
Sir, would you state who you are, please?
Okay, my name is Dan Schenkel. The property where the go-kart track is, that's my brother, okay?
Oh, okay.
I'm not gonna speak for him,
Nice to
but
meet you.
I want y'all to know I have some
Sir, speak into the mic.
some kind of a interest in what this thing looks like. You're right, the thing is gonna be an eyesore right in your property. And to me, the yellow line is the way to go. I don't care what the Game Fish and Park says. I don't care what any of those guys say. They don't care about our land. This is gonna come up later with the 30 by 30. So anyway, I would be all for that yellow line, and I would push it to our state reps and whoever else, get after them people.
Great.
So,
Thanks, Jan.
You
Nice to
betcha.
meet you. Hope
Yep.
to see you again.
Mike, is there a
Thank you.
reason they're not burying that line?
Oh, yes, Dan Clemish asked, is there a reason you can't bury that power line? And that was one of the alternatives I offered East River, was if you can't do anything else and you have to go across Highway 52, can't you at least bury the electrical line? Because all of the electrical lines in that area are buried already. Well, the short answer is no, you can't. It has been done in Europe and other places. It's incredibly expensive, and the issue is heat. When a power line is up in the air, it generates a lot of heat, and that heat is dissipated in the air. Underground, you have to have constant flow of air going through a tunnel where the power line is. They not only don't have the technology, they don't have the training to do it. And so I suppose time is an issue here too, you know. How long would it take to do that? A long time.
So I was just gonna say, is like, yeah, I do remember when they had originally approved that, and I did bring up that question, that power of the transmission line. I was not a commissioner then. And that is one of the things I'm not happy about, is that, you know, at the time they gave this assumption that the transmission line was not a problem. They had it already routed, yet they wouldn't tell us where it was routed. And so that just goes into that planning. And back in March, or was it March or February, I had talked to Mr. Vetter about the situation as well, because I have the property, well, I'd be on the corner of that blue line.
Okay.
So
Oh.
I have the hop farm there. And so they had contacted us about some of the, about that routing as well, because they wanted to come on to the corner of our property. And the way they had it routed to us also brought issues of road right-of-ways and building into areas that in the future could be developed as a road or not as a road. They just didn't have any foresight. They just assumed that everything was crop ground and could be gone right over the top of. And so I talked to Mr. Vetter about what we can do as a county to get better planning in place about these things, about projects like these. And I don't know, Rob, we might have to involve you on the discussion too here, because as far as we could determine is we don't have much power at all as a county to force a transmission line anywhere or anything like that. So it's a difficult situation where, yes, I think this is again where like we need that long-term planning, like you're saying.
Yeah.
We need to have a better picture, and then we need to share that information back and forth with
Right.
public utilities like this.
And you know, this master plan for land use should be a living document. In other words, you don't just put it in stone and then it stays that way forever. It's going to grow and live with the county, with the people who live here. It should take into account the interests of all of the stakeholders, especially the people who live and own property in the lake area. Because, you know, the ultimate goal here, you know, obviously the county needs tax revenue. We all need electricity. The ultimate goal here is to make the quality of life in Yankton County the best in the United States. That's the objective. And you can't do that if you don't have a planning process that looks out at least 20 years. You know, if you think back, how long ago was the year 2000? Couldn't have been 23 years ago.
Mike,
It was.
I think it's, what I would tell you is that I will discuss this with the county commission this coming week, and get back to you and talk to you about what our recommendations would be. And I thank you for bringing this to our attention. And it's on point.
Well, thanks. Thanks, Don. Appreciate it. And with that, I'll get off the stage. Do you want me to turn this off?
Thank you for being a concerned citizen.
Thanks.
Next item on the agenda is a request to advertise a drainage board.
I think it's a 720K voltage. That's
I believe that's what I had heard, too.
720,000, that's a transmission line between substations.
Have one, need a motion to request to advertise for drainage board. This would be a 3-year term again. We have 3 people that are up for the board, Dan Grant, Craig Hansen, and Dylan Tackey, just so you're aware. And anybody out here that's would like to serve on drainage commission, just let us know.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the request to advertise for a drainage board.
I move that we approve the advertising request for drainage board.
Second.
Have a motion and a second by Dan. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed the same, motion carries.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is a conservation easement request by Mr. Lyle Perman, and he's going to attend on the phone.
Do we? He has stuff to present. Media, right?
Hi Lyle, this is Patty.
He has media,
The
right?
commissioners are
Do we
ready.
want to?
Okay.
He has media, right? Do we want to put the media
Yeah.
up?
I don't think we can. Can we, again, Gary? That's why he's calling in.
Maybe Commissioner Heine can do that.
Can you hear me?
He's our IT guy.
Yep, just a second, Lyle. They're gonna see if they can, I don't know,
Yeah. I know.
do you wanna ask them?
Would you need the media on display up here that you have included?
I don't think he can hear you.
Sir, do you need the display on the board to make your presentation?
Hello Lyle, can you hear us?
Yep. I can hear you just fine, and I can see you really well too. If you wave at me,
Oh, he's
you
on.
just can't see me, which
Yeah.
is fine.
Okay, question is whether we have media rights to display your film, your presentation.
Actually, the documents that you can, as far as I'm concerned. The documents I sent are for
Can you
public
hear that?
or for the board. I don't have a PowerPoint prepared. I just have some talking points that I'll cover, and these are just some things that you can use at your discretion, however you'd like.
Okay, we're,
Commissioner Heine is, may get you on the screen.
Great.
while he's doing that, I would like, we all received your presentation in our package, I believe, and we would like to limit your conversation to 15 minutes, please.
Well, that won't be a problem. I hope to have time after my presentation to have questions from the commission or anybody that's in the audience if they would so choose. You can tell me when you're ready for me to start.
think he's ready.
We're ready.
Well, first of all, I want to thank the Commission for allowing me this opportunity to talk about conservation easements. My name is Lyle Perman. I'm a farmer rancher from Lowry, South Dakota, which is up near Mobridge. It's about 300 miles northwest of Yankton. I apologize for not being there in person. It would have most certainly been much better if I could have, but being the time of year it is and the distance involved, it just wasn't possible for me to do that. I'm going to start out by saying I am the president of the South Dakota Ag Land Trust, and I'm a fourth generation farmer rancher. I'll start out by telling you just a little bit about conservation easements. Conservation easements have been, the first ones were probably 60 years ago. They were placed in the state of South Dakota. Right now, the number of conservation easements that we have in the state number in the thousands, covering over 2 million acres that are protected by these conservation easements. So you might ask, well, why was an organization like the South Dakota Ag Land Trust launched or started? It was because a number of entities held those easements prior to 2019 when we were formed. And we just felt it was important, if there was that much interest in conservation easements in the state of South Dakota, that an organization that's driven by farmers and ranchers should be in the business to hold these easements as well. So with that being said, the South Dakota Farm Bureau, the South Dakota Cattlemen's Association, the South Dakota Grassland Coalition, and the South Dakota Conservation Districts came together, formed a nonprofit, appointed a board of directors. Each organization has got 3 members, so we've got a 12-member board. And we hired an executive director, Tony Life, and we went into business in 2019. This past year, we secured our first conservation easement in the Black Hills. We've got a lot of interest by farmers and ranchers, and we're only interested in working lands. And when I say working lands, those will be farms and ranches that currently are in production and will remain in agriculture production. One of the documents that you'll see that I provided was one that was information provided by the American Farmland Trust, showing the state of South Dakota and the number of acres that between 2001 and 2016 were lost. We're talking agricultural land were lost to either high density or low density urbanization, and it amounts to an average of about 5,500 acres a year. And there are a lot of people that feel that some of those acres or acres like that need to be protected from urban encroachment. And so it's those kind of people that are approaching us and are interested in putting an easement on their property. Now, you might ask, so, you know, where's this coming from? How is this being funded? Well, not all conservation easements involve money. There are some people that donate their easement, and there are a number of different types of entities and sources of funding for these easements. And each entity has got their own types of easements that they're interested in funding. Some might only be interested in funding the grassland component. Some might want to fund grass or cropland. And then, like I said, some people are not interested in anything other than protecting their property. So for those people that do this, they feel it's a property right that they've got, and they're the ones that are interested in protecting it. So the important thing that you need to understand is the control of the property stays with the landowner. Yes, in some cases they have sold their developmental rights, but you have to understand that selling the developmental rights is maybe no different than somebody selling their mineral rights. The ranch that we're on, prior to us purchasing it, the prior owners sold all the gravel off of it, that gravel is gone forever. Do I wish that they would have never done it? Sure, because it'd be worth a lot more today, but it's gone and I can't recover it. Do I think that it was wrong for them to do it? No, that was a personal property right they had. But the conservation easements, when we're involved with them and the way they're written, the owner of the land maintains control. If it's ag land and was taxed as non-crop or taxed as cropland, that does not change. So the property taxes you're paying are not impacted at all by these conservation easements. If you don't allow people on your property to hunt prior to the conservation easement, that doesn't change. No one is going to come on your property and tell you that you have done anything to lose control of it unless you sell the developmental rights, and that usually is what happens with the conservation easement. But in terms of you being able to use it for farming and ranching like you have in the past, that will not change. Those management decisions are still going to be yours to choose based on the terms of the conservation easement. Not everybody that has a conservation easement is concerned about the IRS deduction. The very first one that we issued was not a concern of theirs at all. So not all are concerned about that. And as I said earlier, your property taxes will not be impacted by whether you have a conservation easement on your ag land or not. So our goal is to provide these easements for working farms and ranches and keep them as such. I've included a handout there from the American Farmland Trust. I've included a newsletter so you have an idea of what our organization is about. Now, as far as the 30 by 30 executive order, our board of directors were as concerned about it as many in your audience are. We think it was ill-conceived. We think the conservation easements can actually help protect against that type of idea. It's interesting that shortly after that idea was conceived, they changed the name of it to America the Beautiful. So are we concerned about it? Most certainly. But we don't think that restricting conservation easements is the solution to the problem. It's a solution, but it's not one that we want to restrict because it actually can protect from the very thing that everyone is concerned about. So with that being said, I'd be open to any questions that somebody might have that is on the commission or in the audience. I'd be happy to answer them.
Please, if you want to answer,
You could
ask a
just
question, please come to the
turn the thing
mic.
on and do it from,
Here.
you can do it from there.
Good evening, Lyle. This is Julie Auk, representative from District 18. I met you on January 26th during session at the Ag and Natural Resources Committee. Don't know if you remember me. But I do have a question.
Julie, I
Oh.
got to remind you that he has 6 minutes left, and
Okay,
that's...
we're going to make this real quick. I do have a question for you. Since these are conservation easements, let's just say this family puts this conservation easement in place. 30 years down the road, the South Dakota Grasslands Coalition or the Department of Interior decides that there's a chestnut-collared longspur that has now been entered onto the endangered species list. Will that farm family be able to continue to use that land the way that they choose to? Or will they be restricted by when that animal is nesting or, for instance, like a fox denning? If you could answer that for us, that'd be great.
So there's a pretty good echo, Mr. Chairman. I believe I heard her question about an endangered species that now is on the property and questioning how a conservation easement could impact that. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So,
I think you were too close. I'm sorry, go ahead, Lyle.
It's probably not going to matter whether there's a conservation easement on that property if you've got an endangered species there, whether it's defined as the Mexican gray wolf, a prairie orchid, the Topeka shiner, the Sprague's pipit. All kinds of threatened and endangered species are present in our state, and whether there's a conservation easement on that property or not, that is not going to impact how that particular species is going to be managed on your property. Because you have to remember one thing, Representative, you don't have to take money from the government to have a conservation easement.
No.
The very first easement that we hold had no funding. It was an individual like yourself that said, I want to protect my property in perpetuity. So they wrote their own terms to the easement, and it has nothing to do with the government other than in order to qualify for an IRS deduction, and which they're not using, it has to be perpetual. But there is no government funding involved with their easement.
Okay, so, so basically, if that grouse or that long spur showed up on my private property and I didn't tell anybody, or I didn't even know it, I would be able to continue to farm and ranch just like I had previously. But since I put that land into a conservation easement, now I am handcuffed, somewhat handcuffed, to the guards of the Endangered Species Act.
So I'm going to disagree with you. You're going to have the same problem whether you have a conservation easement on that property or not.
The difference, I think, is that the landowner doesn't necessarily have to, there isn't anyone going to come in and inspect that land if it's not in a conservation easement. And I just want to make everybody who's here clear. This opposition that I'm sure you were called about and invited to speak against is not against conservation easements. So that's something that we'll cover later in this meeting. But thank you so much for coming, and thank you for sharing that information.
Lyle, you have about 2 minutes left.
I have nothing unless the commission has questions.
Lyle, this is Commissioner Clemish. I have a question for you. Dealing with Ellsworth Air Force Base and its expansion, I've been told that conservation easements have been an important part in South Dakota keeping our one and only military installation. Is there any truth to that?
Well, it doesn't matter whether it's an Air Force base or a state park. Sometimes they want to expand or they want to protect whether it's their flight zone or their watershed. And right now, if that land is held privately, they don't have a choice but fee title acquisition. Now there are programs out there, and conservation easements can be one of them, that allows a conservation easement to be placed on that property and let it remain as a working land for that farm or ranch, but restricting development within the terms of that easement. And so, our goal is to keep working farms and ranches rather than having governmental entities take, free fee title acquisition of it. So, yes, that is an option in some cases. Has it been exercised yet? No. Will it be in the future? We hope so. We hope that we can use conservation easements instead of having the federal or state government having fee title acquisition.
Sir, we have about 20 seconds left. I would like to thank you very much for your presentation. We will take it under advisement.
I will, if you'd like me to. Do you want me to just stay on until you're done with the balance of the conversation in case somebody has a question?
That's fine. It's up
Sure.
to him.
If you'd like to, sure.
I'm I'm watching you right now, so you guys can't see me, but I can see you. There's a little bit of a delay between YouTube and what I'm hearing, and I apologize for that. But anyway, if you have questions about easements, I'll try and answer them best as I can. Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the 3030 resolution. We've had this item on the agenda.
He might have to mute his.
Sir?
Well, actually, Patty can mute.
Just mute
Yeah,
the
just mute that mic.
Okay. We've had discussions at our last two meetings. Both sides have raised very interesting and realistic issues to consider. And what we've decided to do is we'll take a vote on the original resolution. And if it passes, it passes. If it fails, it fails. Either way, we'll go on and listen to Julie and her revised resolution, and Bernie and his revised resolution, and we will vote on each one of those. So,
Do you want the discussion first or the motion first?
I think we do the motion first
Okay.
On the original.
on the original.
On the original.
I move not to approve the original motion as written because it has some concerning provisions.
Have a motion not to approve the original resolution. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ryan, second. Discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we'll go to Julie.
Well, would you mind if Bernie went first, since I was the one that brought the original resolution? I kind of like to have the final word, if you don't mind. That'd be okay?
I guess I don't care.
We don't care. Bernie's a big guy. Bernie?
I've been married about 48 years. I seldom get the last word, so no, no problem at all. And
We'd like to limit
Oh,
your discussion to 10 minutes.
oh no, much shorter than that. Bernie Hunoff, I'm a resident of Yankton here, and I can be very short. And I only rewrote the resolution seeking common ground because I think the resolution that I wrote does reflect what both opponents and proponents agreed upon that first meeting. So that's the only reason I wrote that. Question?
Is that the one with the lined out stuff in it?
No, that's
That's Julie's.
Okay.
I think mine's
Resolution number 3.
so it was only written as an attempt at
Okay, got
some
it.
kind of common ground. And that's all I want to say tonight is to talk just really briefly about common ground. I mean, man, I got involved in politics in the 1980s, and it was a very different time. And I'm fortunate. I think we're very lucky. We've got 5 very reasonable people on the county commission. But when I first got involved in politics, everybody was that way. Everybody was reasonable. Everybody seemed to look to find common ground. They didn't go out to looking for misinformation and far out ideas and divide people with them. They looked to how could they come together, and agree on things and move forward. And I was very blessed in the 80s and 90s and on into even in the 2008 and 10 that was the way politics worked. And we could always say, Washington's getting kind of crazy, but at least Pierre is better. And Yankton County was way better. And now I'm afraid that the Washingtonitis is filtering down. And I would just, and again, I'm not trying to tell you folks what to do. I respect you so much. But I just would wish that, or hope that local elected bodies don't have to get into the quagmire that Washington is and that Pierre is, and that we could just, keep trying to find common ground on things that really matter, agree on the important things, and leave all the craziness to Washington. Really, all I have to say.
So I think the discussions that several of us had with people in in the community and the public have indicated that they're wondering why we're spending so much time on this issue. And this issue is really an important issue from either side that you look at. But we intend not to spend, today is the day we're going to vote, and that's the end game.
No, and I know you didn't go looking for it, and nothing we decide today, these are just resolutions. People get in more trouble on resolutions than they do on real, on schools and roads and the important things. And again, that's my point. Why divide people on things that don't even mean anything? The issue is important, but the resolution is meaningless. So why divide ourselves on this stuff when we could be working on schools and roads and healthcare and all the important things?
Okay.
Fair enough? Thank you.
Ten. 10 minutes, please.
Uh-oh.
More paper. You know me, I like paper.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First and foremost, thank you very much for the time again tonight. This is my third time from making an issue that I thought was pretty simple and easy to understand, turning it into something that is contentious. But I guess maybe it is contentious because it was introduced by an executive order. And I know there are people that put newspaper articles in the paper and spoke out against it that don't think it's a very big deal or important. But it was important enough for our governor to write a letter to the president, signed by 14 other governors, stating, the undersigned are not aware of any constitutional or statutory authority for the president, the U.S. Department of Interior, or the U.S. Department of Agriculture, or any other federal agency to set aside and permanently conserve 30% of all land and water in the United States, and no authority is referenced in Executive Order 14008. While the order does not identify which lands may be targeted by the program, the Department of Interior released a fact sheet on the same day finding that only 12% of America's lands are currently conserved. The level of restriction, it appears, your administration is seeking under the new policy. Included in the figures are wilderness lands, national parks, national wildlife refuge, state parks, national monuments, and private lands with permanent conservation easements. Signed and written by our governor, Kristi Noem, sent to Washington. Then I have counties that have opposed the 30 by 30 program. As a matter of fact, it was important to these counties in South Dakota. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 counties in South Dakota so far have signed resolutions and presented them to the Department of Interior, the President, the Governor, Kristi Noem. These counties felt that it was important to stand up for their constituents and tell their constituents that they care about private property rights. And as a matter of fact, I like the way Fall River stated, and they were quoting The Guardian, an article, and it states, and quotes, Tom Coors, Government Relations Director of Lands and Natural Conservancy. Even if some protected areas are still privately owned, ownership isn't as important as outcome. Note, this is an assault on private ownership, and the Guardian article reports by summer, it's likely that the Interior Department of the U.S. agencies will have developed a roadmap to reach the 30 by 30 goals. That means there is still time for Americans to influence the process. Now is the time for good people to stand up and be counted. It was important to those 8 counties in South Dakota. It was also important to the House of Representatives. 22 of them signed it and opposed the 30 by 30. Not to mention our own Senator Thune and Rounds both wrote letters opposing the 30 by 30. And each and every one of you sitting up here ran as a Republican. You ran as a Republican on the ballot, and you were elected to represent those conservative values. And it was important at the 2022 Republican State Convention here in South Dakota that we actually wrote a resolution opposing the 30 by 30 program. And I'm going to just take a minute and read it to you. Whereas on January 27, 2021, President Biden issued Executive Order 14008 entitled Tackling the Climate Crisis at Home and Abroad, 86 Federal Regulation 7619, and whereas in Section 216 Executive Order 14008, President Biden directed the Secretary of Interior in consultation with the Secretary of Agriculture and other senior officials to develop a program to stop the current statutory permitted use of at least 30% of lands and waters in the United States by 2030, which is called the 30 by 30 program. And whereas the 30 by 30 program and some 680 million acres of nations' lands would be set aside and permanently preserved in its natural state, ceasing and preventing further productive use of these lands and their resources, some of which are critical to South Dakota and its residents. And whereas there is no constitutional or statutory authority for the President and the Department of Interior or the Department of Agriculture or any other federal agency to set aside and prohibit the permitted use of 30% of all land and water in the United States, and no such authority is referenced in the EO 14008, and whereas the withdrawal of some 680 million acres of federal lands from multiple uses and the placement of such lands in permanent conservation status will cause dramatic and irreversible harm to the economies of many western states, including South Dakota, which has a rich history of responsible and productive use and stewardships of our forests and grasslands. Now therefore be it resolved, the South Dakota Republican Party opposes the 30 by 30 program, including its disregard of federalism and separation of powers and its blanket prohibitions on the use of 30% of the nation's lands in its natural state by 2030, or any similar program that will set aside and prevent the productive use of millions of acres of our federal lands. And be it further resolved that the South Dakota Republican Party supports maintaining, enhancing public use and access to public lands and national forests and grasslands, and opposes road closures, road decommissionings, moratoria on road construction, and other limitations on public access for the purpose of fulfilling the 30 by 30 program's objectives. And I included the other resolutions that are part of the Republican platform. This is serious.
Julie, you have
Yes.
a little over 2.5 minutes left. Do you
Perfect.
want to talk about your new revised?
The new revised vision basically takes out the requirement of the county to be reported to for the conservation easements. It's about private property. This is about private property. And it's basically what this resolution, and I also feel and disagree with Bernie Hunoff. This is important. It's important to every single person that's here that we take a stand as a county and we line up with the governor, our senators, and those 8 other counties and say, we're not going to stand for this kind of authoritative overreach by our federal government. That we care about our private property rights in Yankton County. And no way does that resolution take any private property right away from anyone. It basically just says, here in Yankton County, as the Yankton County Commissioners, we have been elected to be the watchdogs and protect our consumers, our constituents, from any overreach by the federal government. That's what it says. And it is the identical resolution to the other 8 counties that signed. So I think that Yankton County needs to step up and say, we value private property in this county. Not only do we value private property, we value our private property owners. And we're going to wrap a label around this 30 by 30 as a warning and say, listen, pay attention to what you're signing up for. Pay attention to the government programs. pay attention so that you do not lose control of one of the most precious assets that was given to us by our founders, by our Constitution. Our Constitution in the 15th Amendment and the 5th Amendment both protect our private property rights. This is that important to me. I've been studying this for 2 years. By all means, I did not bring this to you on a whim, but I also ran to protect people's property rights. And this is very important. And by all means, it's not a joke. So I do really think that you need to vote for this resolution and oppose the 30 by 30. Yes, Wanda?
I can only speak for myself.
Wanda, can we let her have the rest of her?
I thought she was done.
No. She's got 23
I'll-
seconds.
I'll wait. You have 22 seconds left. Hurry.
Down to 7.
All I can say is that more and more programs are being created, more and more enticements are being created, and I get to steal those 5 seconds. So more and more enticements are being created, and encroachment upon our private property may not be happening in Yankton yet. But I'm on a text message every day with folks in McPherson County. 200 residents throughout South Dakota have received condemnation letters. We have eminent domain encroaching upon our counties. Please pay attention to what's happening with private property. I'm done. Thanks,
Okay,
Don.
thank you. Thank you, Julie.
Well, I had a question for her, or a statement. May I speak
You
now?
can ask, yes. You can ask questions of her. She's still
I
presenting.
occasionally, but you made her sit down.
I didn't force her to sit down.
May I stand?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, this is how I looked at it. When I understood it to be a land grab, I was very, very concerned. Because it sounded as if the government were going to come to say, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, I'm taking your land. But that's not how I read it. I understand what they're trying to do, or claim they're trying to do, is that they're trying to conserve land for the future for the benefit of the planet. Got it. But they're not, at least at this juncture, they don't have the ability to actually take land. They have the ability, if I had land and I wanted to put it in this conservation easement, they would, in theory, pay me for it, but then I could do nothing with it in the future. Got it. It's in perpetuity. However, I don't know that any of us have the right to say that any other person can't do whatever they want with their land.
Absolutely not.
Which was my concern. I'm all about people, private landowners, and people doing what they want with their land. I think the people in McPherson County, it's not part of the 30 by 30 land grab. I think their eminent domain issue is because they want to put a pipeline underneath their land. That's what I think.
All in the name of climate change.
Well, I'm not about climate change. I'm not against climate change.
But this resolution is.
Well, no, the 1414008 is.
Yes.
I don't think this resolution is. This resolution, basically, the new revised resolution with the lines through it, takes out some of the things which I found to be not helpful and unenforceable, because frankly, we could vote for this today and it would mean nothing. Absolutely nothing. We can't enforce it.
Well, resolutions are not meant to be enforced. Wanda, the whole point of this is to send it on to the Department of Interior, the governor, and
I
the
get that.
Biden
And in
administration.
paragraph 7, it says we have to send it on to all other relevant federal and state agencies.
And that
Who
is
would
something-
those be?
Department of Agriculture and our governor.
Well, why, no, it says Department of Interior and Agriculture. It says, it says the Attorney General for whatever
May I
reason that
interrupt
would
you?
be.
May I interrupt you?
And Governor Nome, and all other people. If you took out all other people, it might be more palatable, because I don't know who all these other people I shall send this resolution to.
take out all other people, fine, whatever you want. I think the difference between this resolution and the resolution that was given by Bernie Hunoff is that does not stand up and talk against opposing the 30 by 30. I think you're missing the point a little bit, because what President Biden and his administration is telling the senators in the House of Representatives is that the farmers want this. We want this. The point of this is to send it saying, excuse me, hell no. No, we don't. This is not what we're about. We take care of our own land. We want to control our own land. That's why this is so important. I think the board has forgotten the point. This is all about making a statement that in Yankton County, we value private property ownership. We value private property ownership and the control of that private property. Don Kettering testified himself. So did another member of Yankton County, Lauren Nelson, about how a conservation easement has locked up their control on their land. Now, I am not specifically speaking out against conservation easements. I am speaking out about an overreach of an executive order which has absolutely no authority. And
anything done in perpetuity means forever. So if I wanted to grant an easement to Yankton County or the city of Yankton to go across my land, that would be forever.
Okay, we've gone through this several times already.
Any other questions?
In the last, does anybody else have a question?
I had one, whereas in this resolution, lands placed under permanent conservation easements reduce the tax value of that parcel of land while increasing the tax burden on other private landowners and industries to make up the property valuation different. That is just not true according to South Dakota codified law. And the reason I know this is when we went to county commissioner training, I spoke with the Department of Revenue, and there's a Supreme Court case from Day County on this very issue dealing with conservation easements. And Day County won that case because the individual put their land in a conservation easement and asked that they get a tax reduction. Day County said no and won. And so that is just, we can't sign that because that's not true.
Well,
because that doesn't meet, there are only a few things that agricultural land value can be reduced from. Its location, size, soil, type, terrain, topography, climate, accessibility, and surface obstructions. And this Supreme Court case does not, it basically says easements have nothing to do with valuation. So that can't.
Mr. Chairman, may I speak?
Quickly.
2 minutes. Governor Ricketts at the time sent his secretary of his treasurer around to every single county in Nebraska. And if you take a look at the map of all the, and it's on the back, I believe, of the senators, take a look at the map. Or, excuse me, it's the map of the counties in the nation who have signed. Nebraska's almost red. 56 counties in Nebraska have signed this resolution because these conservation easements were costing the towns so much money. Governor Ricketts spoke out against them because what it does is it lowers the developmental value of that land. So.
But that's Nebraska. That's not how the South Dakota
Well, as a matter
does
of
that.
fact, not too far from our farm, there was a conservation easement placed on a piece of farm ground. And they couldn't sell it. They sold it for a fraction of the valuation because that conservation easement was placed on that farm ground. So I've witnessed it myself. Now, I'm not going to argue with you. And listen, you can take out whatever you want, but I am asking you to please not consider the other option because that is not an opposition to 30 by 30. That is a proponent of 30 by 30. Any other questions?
If anybody wants to see the Supreme Court case, we got that from the Department of Revenue. You're welcome to check that out.
And
I don't think I have any questions for Julie at this moment.
The only distinguishment may be if it's transferred to the federal government versus state conservation entities.
Well, and.
If it's
and-
owned by an individual.
And if you are putting a conservation easement and you are giving up developmental rights to a property, that means that property is now stuck at an undeveloped state, which is meaning that there would be no future development on that property.
Correct.
Which is potentially lost tax revenue in the future.
That's
But
not
that's
how
really
ag land
hard.
is taxed.
I know, but
and
this.
we were at the training, and you're welcome to call the Department of Revenue.
No, I know,
and
I
talk
know,
to them
I know
about
exactly
it.
what you're talking about, all about it. I've gone through all the tax laws. I do know what you're talking about. A conservation easement by itself immediately cannot reduce the tax, the property tax of a property.
Correct.
It only sells developmental rights, which only impacts a future potential for the property and the future potential tax revenue. So it's one of those
But-
damages
but-
that are
but
hard to prove.
you're
You
talking-
can't really prove it.
It's
You're
a
talking
distinction
about-
without a difference.
You're
Yeah.
talking about.
Let's have
the
one-
tax on
one
the
commissioner
building,
at a time
not
talk.
on the land. This is, we're talking about taxes on the actual land. You're talking about development on the building. Like when we had
but,
tax boards the other day, you know, we had to leave the land as it was, but we were able to reduce the amount of tax on the actual structure. And we had to do that because of the way South
But
Dakota law.
if you didn't give away the developmental rights, then you will never have a structure. You will never
Yeah,
have any new
but that doesn't
additional
change the
tax
taxes
income.
on the land.
No, it doesn't.
Yes,
And
that's my
that's
point.
what I said. It does not immediately affect the land as it is today.
Well, it will never affect the land, it'll
It only
affect
takes
the
away its
potential
future.
for a structure.
Which
But not
affects
the
the
land.
developmental status of the land
And so,
and future tax revenues. Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Don, for all the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are you accepting any other comments?
No.
Well,
I don't know if can we do that? Can we,
Pardon?
can we really do that? Like not have public comment if we're going to vote on this?
He's the chair.
give him his 3 minutes.
It's not gonna take that long.
3 minutes times 65 people?
Guy Larson, I've spoken opposition to this already. I would point out that I tried not to make this a political issue from the beginning. Now it's become entirely political. She's asking you as Republicans to rebuke President Biden for coming up with the 30 by 30 program. My question to you, the question that you have to ask yourselves, is does this resolution benefit Yankton County and its citizens? That's the thing that counts, because if you can't enforce it, you're making a statement. We don't support the 30 by 30 program, we do support the 30 by 30 program, or we don't do anything. I think your best option is not to pass a resolution. Just because 8 other counties have passed it, I would guarantee you that in probably all 8 of those counties, there was nobody like me at the first meeting that stood up and said, you've got to examine this question from both sides. You can't just listen to the people that brought you this thing. I know that's what happened in Bonham County. I don't think it should happen in Yankton County. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Guy. Anybody else? You're next.
Zane Williams, Irene. What concerns me the most about the whole thing, and it doesn't matter which side of the ledger you sit on, left or right, if we would take 30% of our land out of production is what worries me. Our small towns will wither up and dry, there'll be nothing. And it will only increase the size of our farms because the young guy will not be able to compete with the old guys, and we're going to lose our young people. And our young people in this county and our whole nation is our future. And that's what concerns me the worst. Schools, everything will centers around next generation. We're all getting old. but we need those young people. We need them everywhere. In our schools, Kletsky Implement, co-ops will not have as much business without 30% of our productive land. That's my biggest thing with this 30 by 30. That's what worries me the most. For our local economy will not thrive.
Thank you. No, that gentleman behind you. First, please. You're next.
Yes, sir. I'm Chris Patton. I live in Yankton. Last time I was here, I spoke on behalf of Commissioner Heine's zoning. I am president of Midwest Elderberry Cooperative. I've spent 10 years working with small farmers from coast to coast on producing, berries, specialty crops that actually the land benefits the environment because they're perennials. The land never turns over. I've been working for over 10 years with the University of Minnesota and University of Missouri similarly. And last year I was lobbying the legislature, University of Minnesota. Midwest Elderberry Cooperative is a Minnesota co-op for funds for just this purpose. And I think, we've heard earlier in the gentleman's presentation about easements and voluntary easements, and that can be a tool. A lot of times I don't think it's the best tool. There are a lot of tools available for farms and land management with existing federal programs. There's not a lot of them because most federal money goes to expand big ag. And I don't want to do that. I'm living for the family farmer and small and medium-sized farms, and I want to see that those are profitable. Now, the comments I'm making are my own, not that of the co-op or universities or anybody else I work with. But I have to say this, I think Mr. Hunoff really is a politician because he said something I agree with that I would rephrase this way. May God bless and keep Washington, D.C. far away from us. And to me, that is the whole point of this resolution. We do not want federal encroachment on South Dakota land from a presidential mandate, a dictate, because number one, the federal government is not very good at what it does. We've had 60 years of a war on poverty, and we've got greater income disruption and inequality in this, and poverty is still with us. We have a student loan program was supposed to help students. They're $1.7 trillion in debt, and their college degree is not as valuable as a high school degree was back in 1968 or 1970. And we could go on and on, the housing, health care. I mean, they told us that opioids are safe and effective. We've got hundreds of thousands dead and a crisis there. So I think we need to keep control here. And I would rather see the county, if they want to do something about the environment, that they work with the South Dakota Department of Ag, specialty crops, just like I do with specialty crops in Minnesota, and I'm doing that. I work with several growers in South Dakota already. And by the way, Julie Auk has a very substantial aronia berry operation, which is very good to the environment, and I expect she does a lot more for the environment than most citizens in Yankton County. Thanks.
Thank you,
Chris,
sir.
Can I ask you a
Yeah.
question? You brought up a couple different things. I mean, we all kind of realize this resolution doesn't, we're mad at the federal government and we want to do something, and this resolution apparently is it. But, I mean, are we going to do a resolution against student loan program?
No, those are those are
opioids?
just examples of
But-
why we should,
but-
only 22% of the people in this nation trust the government.
I think that's probably
And those are the
pretty high.
reasons why.
But what I'm saying is if this resolution doesn't do anything, should we do a resolution, against opioids and send that to Washington, and one against the housing
No, I think-
program and one against healthcare being too? If this doesn't do anything, why are we spending, is this the fourth meeting on this?
Okay.
Instead of working on our ambulance, which is about this far from going bankrupt, just so you guys know, our ambulance is, in bad shape, and the day is gonna come pretty soon when you call 911 and there's nobody there. But instead of working on that, we're working on this stuff. We have a stone church bridge we can't afford to fix. We should be working on that. that really
Dan,
affects people.
Dan, come on, let's move on.
Yeah, I think
But-
we're gonna vote
We-
tonight, Dan, and we
we
won't
can-
have any more. I think the biggest thing that I'm thinking to answer that is we're focused on one particular
Just this
initiative.
resolution. Okay.
And
Got it.
the problem is you give the government an inch, they take a mile.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yep.
That's what everybody says.
I'm Devin Wagner, and the one thing with the 30 by 30, the only thing I see is like
Speak into the mic,
like when
please.
Dan was talking about the tax valuation, that's fine, and I agree with him. But what I do see what could happen is, let's say tomorrow, like every farmer around Yankton, put with like let's say a 2-mile buffer, put all their land in a land easement, and it had locked it for future development, and the whole town could not grow. They would be handcuffed to the size they're in now. That is a possibility that could happen. It's not likely to happen, but it's something that could happen. And that would totally trash the tax revenue for future tax revenue of the county completely, because it destroy future development of the city at all. And that is something that is, like I said, it's not probable, but it could happen. And that's my piece.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Hello. Hello. I'm Guy Stone, here from Yankton. I hadn't planned on speaking, but I want to say this. I think, one thing, you get a little knowledge the longer you live. And if you think, I think you're terribly naive to think if the federal government puts out a goal with a proposed second goal of 50 by 50, if you don't think that they're for government rights of property, I think you're sadly mistaken. You'll end up like Sweden, where they tell you how many cows you can run and what color your barn can be. So I would suggest that you're naive if you don't think there's an ulterior motive for the long term. And I think it's important to put yourself on record. That's the main purpose. To say there's no purpose to it, put yourself on record that we care about individual property rights. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands going in the air, the motion that we would be voting on is the revised resolution that Julie presented. It's been in the packet. So I would entertain a motion to get it on the board. I'll make that motion to put it on the board for discussion.
Is that you're putting it on motion to pass?
What's the motion?
Pardon?
Are you making a motion to pass?
No,
Oh.
putting it on to open it up for discussion.
Oh, open it up for discussion, okay. Yeah, I think the one thing I keep coming back to on this whole motion is people are like, oh, why are we passing this resolution? I agree with a lot of people. I'm not a fan of just passing resolutions to make statements. We have a lot bigger, more local problems to really work on, as Dan said and says. But the section 216 of that executive order very specifically calls on to make the United States working with state, local, tribal, territorial, agricultural, forest landowners, fishermen, and just a whole slew of people. But the executive order is what directly puts us into the involvement. And so it wasn't like we asked to be involved in this fight or this issue. We were
But
put
we
there by the
don't
executive
have to
order.
go there yet because I haven't got a second.
Oh, no, well, I'm talking about discussion.
Well,
Yeah.
we want a motion and a second, and then we'll go to discussion.
Oh, okay, well.
Well, I thought
we
he
went to
seconded.
Because it
discussion.
dies if it
Oh.
don't get a second.
Oh, well, then I'll move to pass the resolution, the revised resolution.
Okay, have a motion and a second. Now, open for discussion.
Okay, well, I've already gave my one piece. I thought we were already in
Yep, we
discussion.
remember it.
So,
Anybody else?
Well, I am not in favor of the 30 by 30. My concern is we can't enforce it. Maybe if we pass the resolution, except paragraph 7, which contains and all other relevant federal and state agencies, maybe we can move on to work on local problems. Because 30 by 30 is, as I understand it, between the government and a willing landowner. If you're not a willing landowner at this stage, it might morph into something in the future, but at this stage, it's supposedly between a willing landowner and the government. But I'm not in favor of taking property out of production.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, the whereas section, could we remove that too? Because that's just
Which
not.
whereas? There's
The
3 of them.
whereas lands placed under permanent, I mean, that's just not true under codified law of South Dakota. If that would be gone,
What page are you looking at?
that would be the last
Last page.
whereas.
so are you?
She struck the last whereas. Oh, the second to the last whereas.
Yeah.
Look at the revised copy.
Yeah, look at the,
Does not have the strikeouts, strike-throughs.
Yeah.
Says edited at the top.
yep. Because that's just, according to the Department of Revenue, that's just not true. We should, if we're gonna pass resolutions, they should at least be factual.
So would you make a motion to amend it to have
Well,
without that?
I would like that if,
With those two,
With those two adjustments,
Changes.
no the last whereas removed.
you know,
And strike and all other relevant federal and state agencies.
if we do,
On-
if we
on
do that,
item
it's
7.
pretty much the
Absolutely.
third resolution at that point.
no, it's not, but
pretty
I
close.
could live with it then.
John?
I guess that I can support the resolution as with the revisions that are spoken this evening. But I still think we need to train and educate our agricultural committee that signing a perpetual easement is probably not the correct thing to look forward to for their future and for their relatives moving on down the line. And I think through some local groups and agricultural groups that we have in place now, that would be the focus for them to educate local landowners.
And I kind of disagree with you. There might be some situations out there where a perpetual easement might be a good thing, but everything's unique and it does take a lot of study. Each situation's unique, and I don't think we want to have the county involved in trying to push easements on people. And I don't think we should be in the way of people who want to do these things either.
Well, I agree,
just to
and that's
say
why
private
we're
parties.
talking
Yeah.
about this resolution and why we're talking about education also.
Yeah.
Then I move to modify, or do we have to vote on the last one?
Well, I think we have to
Take-
move to.
Can I
we have
make
to
a change?
Motion in a second.
Then I make a motion to take out the whereas involving the removing property from the tax rolls and the last 8 words of paragraph 7, paragraph number 7, and all other relevant federal and state agencies.
What about just taking all of 7?
Well, what harm is it to send a copy of it to a
Okay.
bunch of people?
Yeah, I think.
Are you good with that, Julie?
You're seconding me or him?
Seconding you.
Okay. Then let's vote.
Are you good with taking out the whereas lands placed under permanent conservation easements reduce the tax value, that paragraph? And,
I'm not gonna argue with that paragraph, but taking out paragraph 7
No, just
no,
the
just
last
the last
8
words.
words.
And all other,
No. He said the entire paragraph.
Yeah.
I said the last 8 words.
Just the last 8 words.
I think I understand. What you want to take out is and all other relevant federal and state agencies.
Correct, because I don't have any idea who they are.
and the whereas lands placed under permanent conservation easements reduce the tax value of that parcel of land while increasing the tax burden on other private landowners and industries to make up the property valuation differences.
The last whereas paragraph.
If that'll help this through and we don't have to come back, yes.
I think we all think like that.
I think.
Till
I
the
think
next resolution, right?
Then I think we should vote quickly.
The housing resolution
I
next
want to make
meeting.
one comment.
Oh, no, here we go. 3 minutes?
You want me to start the timer?
Yeah, start it. One of the concerns that I have on these permanent easements is, so a guy puts it in and his kids take it over and they forget that they have to put out money to spray thistles, and the Canadian thistles go over to the next neighbor's ground, and they do nothing. There's nobody gonna enforce anything. There's nothing there. And that can happen to flooding, it can happen to thistles, it can happen to a lot of actions. So, okay, let's take a roll call vote.
Okay, so this is Wanda's and Ryan, right, the second amended?
Yes.
Yes.
Wanda,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Don.
Yes. Lyle, I think we're done with that, at least for tonight. He's off?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank everybody for coming. Thank you for your interest. Thank you for representing whichever side of the issue that you were interested in.
I thank you all for all the emails too. A lot of reading I've done in the last couple of weeks about this.
All right, that can clear a room.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the April 11th, 2023 minutes.
I so move.
I have a motion,
Second.
and a second, a motion and a second, discussion.
John and Ryan?
John and Ryan. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, the same, motion carries. Next, the April 17, 2023 minutes.
Move to approve the April 17, 2020.
Wanda motions,
Second.
John seconds. All, discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Strategic updates. I'm going to talk with you a little bit later. It's nothing but some procedural things here that we've got. Next item on the agenda is renewal malt beverage licenses.
Do you want them one at a time?
No, just one motion.
I would move to approve the uniform alcoholic beverage license applications
Second.
in mass.
Second.
I have a motion by Wanda, second by Dan. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is claims. They have entertain a motion to,
I would move to approve the first set of claims.
Second.
motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, the same. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the April,
Nope, there's a second
Oh,
set of claims.
yeah.
I move to approve the second set of claims.
Second.
motion by John, second by Dan. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 I abstain.
Motion carries. Next is the April 2023 payroll.
I move to approve the April 2023
I have
payroll.
a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
John, discussion, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Unanticipated revenue from the sheriff.
This is those, member.
Bulletproof vests.
Move approval.
Second.
Got a motion to approve, a second by John. Discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is public comment.
Start the clock.
Lauren Nelson, Yankton here. Thursday night, I went out to Platte. There was a informative meeting about the Gregory County pump storage project. And about 150 people in that room. And to say the least, that there was passion, people that were upset. If you don't know, pump storage, what they plan on doing is taking water out of the Missouri River, pumping it up, I don't know how many feet, up to a reservoir 70 feet deep. And then when electricity's low, they're going to force it back down into the river. People are scared. It's going to put people's land underneath water. They don't know how it's going to affect the fishing out there, the tourism out there. And the thing about it is, as I sat there, is you have 5 people from Mid-American Energy and Western Minnesota Electricity, some company. These gentlemen sitting there telling about what's going on and what's happening and stuff. And when I got done speaking, there was a gentleman, I told John the story last night, there was a gentleman sitting there and he kind of started smirking and laughing because I had said that the county commission, is one of your last lines of defense against this. And he started smirking and laughing. And I kind of go, well, why are you laughing? He's a county commissioner and he feels helpless. And that's why I think this 30 by 30 was so important, because you're not sitting here helpless at this time. You have power to do something, and you say, oh, there's no power behind it. No, you're making a statement. You're telling the federal government, because that's what this is out at Gregory County. They're not going to make a profit. It's all about federal money. Same thing with the carbon pipeline. It's federal money that's pushing this. And that's the thing. It's all federal money. It's all being pumped, and it's all coming back. After Biden's executive order, 67 pump storage projects are now on the agenda. The last one built was like in the 1970s or 80s. Why? Money. But I'm just going to go back to that county commissioner, because he laughed because he said, I feel helpless. I have no power. There's nothing much I can do. And that's the thing. We have to stay ahead of this, because if it's happening to McPherson, if it's happening to Gregory County, it's going to happen to Yankton, because the government's going to keep pumping money and pumping money and pumping money. And there's going to be a project that's going to look pretty sweet to some company and the money that they can make off the backs of the citizens of Yankton County. Thanks.
Thanks, Lauren. Thank you. Any other public comment? Hearing none, public comments closed. Commissioner updates. Dan?
I got to start. All right. Well, the committee for the county unfunded mandate study had been set. I introduced you guys to Senator Deibert from Lawrence County. Also Senator Duhamel, Schoenbeck, Wink, Kamak, Chaffee, and Chase. So if there's anything you'd like to send me to have them look at for the summer study, let me know. It's going to try to focus on things that are assigned to counties that the state could maybe take over. Court-appointed attorneys, I believe we're 1 out of 5 states in the entire nation that is on the county's responsibility and not the state. So they're going to start, first meeting hasn't been set, but that's going to be happening here pretty soon. If you have any thoughts, send them to me. Other than that, I don't have anything.
I really have none at this point.
Wanda?
Nada.
Ryan?
I have only one small short update to Thrive has set the date for the 25th for their agritourism panel. So I'll be on there probably representing a little bit more of the county side of things as well as being a destination as well. So agritourism panel, yep. So I think
That's
it'll be
the
a good
25th?
on the 25th, yeah.
And I have nothing. I'd entertain a motion to go into executive session for poor relief issues pursuant to South Dakota CEL.
I would move to go into executive session for poor relief pursuant to SDCL 1-25-2 and 28-13 and 28-13 1.3, executive session with regard to litigation and personnel issues.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. We're in executive session. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
Not yet, not open ones yet. We'll have,
Do we want to sign
we
them?
could.
I need to sign them all.
For next year, yeah. When's the best time? Fall is the best time. Yeah. Really like end of August, beginning of September is the best. Yeah. We gotta do what the speaker
Second.
on.
Motion of the second to come out of executive session.
And,
Wanda and Ryan?
yep. And I think for next meeting, I think we should entertain Mike Welsh spearheading the long-term strategic plan. Since he appears to be
Does he, do you
very,
want him, do you want him on the agenda, or are you just gonna make that?
no, I want it on the agenda.
Or I don't know, I think, do we want to make this sort of like a task force type thing where we get Mike Walsh, maybe a citizen or two, and
Because he has apparently a lot of time and nothing to do.
maybe 2 county commissioners, and then maybe someone from the planning and zoning too, to,
I don't know. But let him do it.
I don't know.
He wants to do it, I'm willing to let him.
I'm willing to work with him on it, because the lake area is kind of important to me.
Well, it is, but it's already such a mess, I don't think, unless a tornado comes through, we're not gonna be able to change it.
The whole county, I think.
You know, they are tornado
Don,
magnets.
turn your mic on.
But, we're talking about putting this
We
on
have
the
to have
agenda.
representation from,
Yeah,
So I should contact Mike and tell him to come?
put him on the agenda.
yeah.
Well,
talking
maybe you should discuss them offline and get like an idea and a plan to move forward on exactly what they want to do. I mean, do you have an area? Is it just the lake area? Is it the whole county? Is it a plan for something specific? Or I guess what are we trying to do? Are we updating our comprehensive plan? What are we doing?
Why don't we let him focus on the lake area and the rest will fall into place?
Okay. A good
Because-
thing to do with that, then, maybe in our zoning ordinance, we have what's called a Highway 52 overlay. Maybe have him look over that and
Well,
That's
update
just a
that.
narrow,
think, yeah.
that's just a narrow track though. I
Well,
think.
but you could maybe make that into something bigger
Yeah,
too. So-
but I think we're getting a little too detailed here. I think we're just talking about putting them on the agenda, maybe talk about how to maybe make a task force or something like that to make these plans or make this idea come to plan. Not get into details right here while we're talking about agenda at the 11th hour of the night. So.
Did you guys have any, what was any on the executive?
Oh,
No
there
action.
was no action to be taken on from executive session on poor relief, litigation, or personnel matters.
Adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries. We are adjourned.
Thanks.
This is that letter that came to me. Does that go to Gary?
No,
Who does that go to?
that's just Yankton City has another TIF district.
Okay. We don't care.